Let me warn you from the start. This isn't going to be comfortable. It won't be soft. And it's not the soothing message you may secretly want to hear. But it is exactly what you need. Since childhood, most of us have been trained to look outward, to search for someone to blame, to attach a face and a name to our suffering. And often, painfully often, that face belongs to our mother. But here's the truth no one dares to say out loud. It's not your mother who is still holding you back. It's what your mind did with her. This isn't about pointing fingers, nor is it an attack. It's a truth so raw that many people spend their entire lives running from it. Because the mother doesn't just exist in the world around you. She takes root inside your unconscious, long after she leaves the room. You've tried to move on. You've searched for peace. You've told yourself you've grown past it. And yet peace refuses to come. Why? Because you're still trapped in a war you haven't even named. And what war is that? It's not a war against flesh and blood. It's a war against an image, against a shadow, against an echo of the mother that your young mind carved deep into your psyche before you even had words to make sense of the world. And here's the cruelest part. That shadow doesn't walk away on its own. It lingers, it feeds, it shapes. Carl Jung gave this shadow a name, the mother complex. But don't be deceived by the sterile sound of that phrase. It is not just a psychological label. It is a prison. An emotional jail with invisible bars, so subtle that you may not even know you're locked inside. You can feel it in the silence when you judge yourself mercilessly. You can feel it in that bottomless hunger for approval that nothing seems to satisfy. You can feel it in the emptiness that gnaws at you when your achievements still leave you restless. And the most brutal realization? That hunger was never truly yours to begin with. It was inherited. It was carved into your being like an ancient inscription passed down from one generation to the next. Think of how myths across time have spoken of the mother figure. Isis in Egypt, who mourned and resurrected Osiris. Demeter in Greece, who searched the earth for her lost daughter Persephone. Or the Virgin Mary in Christianity, exalted as pure love, yet also bound by sorrow. Across cultures, the mother archetype was always larger than life, giver of safety, yet bringer of pain. A source of nourishment, yet also of exile. This duality is no accident. It reflects the same paradox living in you right now, the longing for comfort, colliding with the terror of suffocation. And so, as you sit here today, an adult on paper but still carrying the heart of that child, you realize something terrifying. You're not waiting for just anyone to finally say, everything's going to be okay. You're still waiting for her, for the one figure who should have said it long ago, but didn't. But here is where the story sharpens into its harshest edge. That moment you've been waiting for will never come. Healing isn't about her finally changing. Healing isn't about her finally apologizing, embracing you, or offering the words you craved. Healing begins when you stop waiting. And stopping that wait, it feels like devastation. Because you've been told forgiveness is the key. That empathy will set you free. That if you just walk a mile in her shoes, the pain will dissolve. And yes, understanding her may help, but not until you do something far more radical. You must look inward. You must take ownership of the wound. Because here's the truth you've been avoiding. It no longer belongs to her. It's yours, only yours, and no one is coming to heal it for you. So I'll ask you this. Are you ready to stop searching outward? Are you ready to step into the most unsettling battlefield of all, the one within yourself? Because that's where the war began. And that's where it will either continue to haunt you or finally end. Carl Jung once called it the mother complex. But don't mistake this phrase for a simple academic category, something you can skim past in a textbook. What he meant was far more haunting. The mother becomes more than a person. She becomes an archetype, a living symbol planted in your unconscious, shaping you from the inside. Over time, the flesh and blood woman, the mother who laughed, cried, or failed you, fades. What remains is her shadow, an internal figure that drives you like an invisible puppeteer. She stops being human in your mind and becomes something larger, heavier, and harder to escape. And you've felt her presence, haven't you? In every moment when you shrink instead of speaking. In every relationship where you demand unconditional understanding but find only disappointment. In every secret hope that someone, somewhere, will see you fully and finally give you what she never did. But what you're chasing isn't them. It's her image, her echo, her shadow that lingers long after she's gone. This shadow is cunning. It doesn't scream at you from outside. It whispers from within. It sits in your inner dialogue, the one that tells you you're not enough, not yet, not ever. And the cruel irony? You confuse that inner voice for your own. You think it's just who I am. But it isn't. It's the mother archetype, unintegrated, still running wild in your psyche. To understand how powerful this shadow is, consider history itself. Humanity has always told stories of the Great Mother, sometimes as savior, sometimes as destroyer. The Sumerians worshipped Inanna, fierce goddess of fertility and war. The Greeks revered Demeter, who gave abundance but could also plunge the world into famine with her grief. In Hindu tradition, Kali embodied creation and annihilation in one terrifying form. Across cultures, the mother was both a source of life and a symbol of suffocation, a duality mirrored in the way we experience our own mothers internally. Psychology simply gave language to what myth had already known. The mother archetype is inescapable. She is the first figure to define our safety and our fear, our belonging and our exile. And when this archetype remains unhealed, unexamined, it becomes a shadow we cast on everyone we meet. That's why so many of your decisions are not really yours. The career path you chose, the people you date, the way you fold yourself to fit into someone else's approval, all of it, more than you'd like to admit, comes from this ancient shadow lodged in your soul. You thought you were acting freely, but much of the time you were only reenacting her voice. And here is the most painful realization. What you long for most, her approval, her embrace, her words of acceptance, cannot come from her anymore. It has become an archetypal hunger, an echo of childhood needs that were never met. And no matter how many times you search for it in lovers, in friends, in authority figures, it will never be satisfied from the outside. Because what you are really wrestling with isn't your mother as she is. It's your mother as she lives inside of you. A myth, a symbol, a shadow. And the longer you fail to recognize it, the more it runs your life. So let me ask you, when you feel that hollow ache, that desperate craving to be seen and loved, are you really reaching for another person, or are you reaching for a phantom? That's the question most never dare to answer, but it's the one that decides everything. The shadow of the mother doesn't just live in the background of your mind. It becomes the bars of a prison, invisible, silent, but unyielding. You can't point to them, but you feel them every day. It shows up in that inner critic that never rests, that voice that tells you you're failing even when you've achieved more than most. It shows up in that aching hunger for approval that no success, no recognition, no love ever seems to fill. And here's the cruel part. It feels endless because it isn't truly yours. It's inherited. Your hunger for approval is not only about what you lacked, it is the echo of a lineage. Wounds passed down silently from mother to daughter, mother to son for generations. A chain of unmet needs, unspoken resentments, uncried tears. You're not just carrying your pain. You're carrying hers, and hers, and hers. Trauma doesn't vanish when one generation buries it. It travels. It weaves itself into silence, into gestures, into the way love is given or withheld. Think of how many families sit around dinner tables filled with chatter but void of intimacy. Think of how many mothers raise children with stoic discipline, not because they didn't love them, but because softness was never given to them either. What you feel as a personal emptiness is often a cultural inheritance, an emotional tax passed down through bloodlines. And yet, even knowing this doesn't free you. Because the mother complex is not just history, it's alive, here and now, replaying itself in your daily life. Every time you fold yourself smaller just to be accepted, the prison tightens. Every time you chase after validation from someone who cannot give it, the bars close in. And every time you abandon your own needs to keep peace, you reinforce the lock yourself. What makes this prison so devastating is its invisibility. Most people never even realize they're inside. They believe their anxieties are natural, their self-criticism justified, their hunger for love just a flaw in their personality. And they don't see the shadow pulling the strings, and so they spend a lifetime fighting battles they never name, against an enemy they can't see. And here lies the paradox. The shadow was born long before you could defend yourself. It was imprinted in the tender years when you were too small to resist. That look you craved but never received. That embrace that never came. The words you needed but were left unspoken. These tiny fractures accumulated until they formed a silent architecture inside you. Now, as an adult, you walk through life inside that architecture without even realizing it. To the world, you look free. But inwardly, you are still trapped in that childhood house, still hearing the echoes of unmet needs bouncing off the walls. Peace will not come as long as you live in denial of this truth. The war is not with her anymore. The war is with the image, the shadow, the prison you've inherited and sustained. And until you see it, name it, confront it, it will continue to rule you. So ask yourself, how much of your suffering today is really about the present? And how much of it is simply the echo of a childhood war still raging inside you? You've heard it all before. Forgive and you'll be free. They tell you forgiveness is the key that unlocks the prison door. That if you just learn to see her pain, if you put yourself in her shoes, if you understand her story, you'll finally heal. And sometimes, yes, forgiveness can soften the edges. But more often, it becomes another illusion, a comforting myth that keeps you circling the same wound. Because here's the truth. You cannot forgive what you still expect to receive. You cannot forgive a debt you're still hoping will be paid. And deep down, so many of us are still waiting for that debt to be repaid, the embrace, the approval, the words that never came. Forgiveness, when it comes too soon, becomes a mask, a way to avoid facing the raw truth that those needs will remain unmet. Healing doesn't begin with forgiveness. Healing begins with acceptance, the most devastating kind. The acceptance that she may never change, that she may never see you, never understand you, never give what you craved. And in that acceptance, a door opens. Not a door back to her, but a door inward to yourself. This is where responsibility comes in, and responsibility feels like a heavy, unfair weight. Because you didn't choose these wounds, you didn't ask for this inheritance, and yet here it is, written into the fabric of who you are. And the cruel paradox, even though you didn't cause the wound, it has now become yours to heal. No one else can do it for you. Not your mother, not your partner, not your therapist, not even time itself. Ancient traditions knew this long before psychology did. The Stoics taught that suffering is only transformed when we take ownership of our response, not the cause. The Buddhists spoke of liberation through acceptance, not resistance. And Jung reminded us that until the unconscious is made conscious, it directs our lives, and we call it fate. So ask yourself this: How many times have you caught yourself becoming her? How many times have you said the very words, acted out the very patterns you once swore you would never repeat? That is the trap. The complex is not just emotional, it is behavioral. It inhabits you, it animates you, and if you remain blind to it, you become its reflection. Breaking the cycle requires something more painful than forgiveness. It requires killing the illusion. It means giving up the hope that one day what didn't happen will finally happen. It means facing the grief that your childhood is gone, and no one, not even her, can return to fix it. And in that grief lies the hardest truth of all. There will be no perfect closure, no magical repair. Healing doesn't mean waiting for her to finally show up. Healing means learning to give to yourself what she never did, to stand where she could not stand, and to become for yourself what you once so desperately needed. So the question is no longer, will she change? The real question is, will you? Every family carries its own mythology. Stories whispered or silenced, rules spoken or unspoken, wounds visible or hidden. And within those stories, patterns form, patterns so powerful that they shape entire generations. The mother complex is not just your burden. It is a pattern woven through the bloodline. And unless it is broken, it will continue to repeat. You've seen it. The parent who swore they'd never be cold, yet raises their child in silence. The daughter who promised she'd never sacrifice herself, yet lives a life of endless self-denial. The son who vowed to be strong, yet finds himself crumbling under the same invisible weight. Patterns repeat, not because we want them to, but because the unconscious is stronger than our promises. This is why Jung insisted that what is not made conscious returns as fate. Until you name the wound, it writes your destiny for you. And so, without realizing it, you reenact the very dynamics you swore you'd escape. You chase love the way she once chased it. You shrink your needs the way she once shrank hers. You live out her script while believing it is your own. Breaking this cycle hurts more than anything else, because it requires killing the illusion you've clung to all your life. It requires acknowledging that the closure you've been waiting for, the embrace, the apology, the validation, will never arrive in the form you expect. Your childhood is gone, sealed, unreachable. And the comfort that never came, you must now learn to give it to yourself. That realization feels like a death. And in a way, it is. It's the death of the fantasy that one day the story will be rewritten from the outside. But within that death lies the seed of freedom. Because the moment you stop waiting, you begin the work of creating, the work of building yourself, the work of becoming the parent you never had, the work of turning your suffering into something other than repetition. This isn't just psychology. It's survival. At the deepest human level, every culture has faced the challenge of passing down pain or transforming it. Think of the biblical Exodus. Generations enslaved until one generation chose to walk into the desert rather than remain in bondage. Think of epics where heroes confront their family curses, not by denying them, but by refusing to repeat them. To break a cycle is to step into a role larger than yourself. But make no mistake, it hurts. Breaking the cycle means confronting the ache you've avoided. It means looking into the eyes of your inner child and saying, "She may never come to save you, but I will." So I'll ask you this, and don't answer lightly. Are you willing to stop waiting for love to arrive the way you always hoped, and instead give it to yourself the way you always deserved? Because if you are, then you've already begun to break the pattern. Jung warned us, the mother is never just a mother. She is an archetype, a symbol so ancient it has appeared in every culture, every story, every mythology humanity has ever told. She represents the origin of life, the promise of safety, the warmth of nourishment. But she also carries a darker side, suffocation, dependency, and the terror of losing yourself in her gaze. When the archetype remains unintegrated, when it is not recognized as symbol but mistaken for reality, it becomes a shadow. And shadows don't vanish just because you look away. They grow. They take shape in the hidden corners of your mind, and then they project themselves outward. That's why you find yourself replaying the same scenes in different settings. You demand unconditional understanding from partners who cannot give it. You look to mentors, bosses, even friends, secretly hoping they'll heal an ancient wound they don't even know exists. You keep waiting for someone to rescue you, not realizing you're chasing an archetype, not a person. History is filled with examples of this duality. The Greeks saw it in Demeter, the mother who nourishes the world with grain, but who also plunges it into famine when her daughter is taken away. In Hindu tradition, Kali embodies both creation and annihilation, love and terror. In medieval Europe, Mary was venerated as the perfect mother, an unreachable ideal that left real women judged against impossible standards. Each culture, in its own way, mirrored the ambivalence you feel inside, the mother as both savior and jailer. And here is where the danger lies. When you mistake the archetype for reality, you stop seeing people as they are. You don't see your partner, you see the shadow of your mother. You don't see your friend, you see the wound begging to be healed. You don't see your boss, you see the authority you've been struggling against since childhood. The result? Disappointment, frustration, and a cycle of craving that never ends. Because the truth is this: lack cannot be filled by another person. You can pour love, success, validation into that emptiness, and it will still echo. It isn't a wound that belongs to the present. It belongs to the past. And until you name it for what it is, a shadow of the archetype, you will continue to project it onto everyone you meet. So the first step toward liberation isn't in demanding more love, more understanding, more approval from the outside. The first step is recognition. Recognition that the figure you're still fighting, the one you're still waiting for, isn't really your mother anymore. It's the myth of her, the archetype, the shadow. And when you see that clearly, something shifts. For the first time, you realize you've been at war not with people, but with ghosts. And the only way to end that war is to stop projecting the shadow outward and begin integrating it within. There's something deeper still, something most people never name, yet it rules their lives with ruthless precision. It isn't resentment. It isn't longing. It's loyalty. A secret vow stitched into your unconscious before you ever had words. This vow is not spoken aloud, but it guides you like a hidden compass. I will not surpass my mother. I will not be freer than her. I will not heal unless she heals first. It sounds absurd when spoken, yet look closely, and you'll see its traces everywhere. Every time you sabotage your own progress, every time guilt washes over you when life begins to go well, every time you hold yourself back just enough to stay small, that vow is at work. It is twisted because it disguises itself as love. You grew up believing that your identity was tied to hers, that if she suffered, you must suffer too. Somewhere deep in your emotional code, you equated survival with loyalty. If I am happy while she is not, I betray her. That's the prison within the prison. And so, without knowing it, you repeat her story. Her fears become yours. Her limitations echo in your choices. Her frustrations seep into your relationships. Not because you want to, but because part of you still whispers, "I'll carry it for you, Mom. I won't leave you behind." But here's the brutal truth. Your suffering does not honor her. Your stagnation does not save her. Your unhappiness does not heal her wounds. All it does is continue the pattern, binding you to a fate that was never yours to begin with. Cultures across the world have recognized this strange inheritance. In ancient tragedies, children carried the curses of their parents until someone dared to break them. In indigenous traditions, healers spoke of ancestral burdens, invisible weights passed from one generation to the next. Modern psychology calls it intergenerational trauma. But the language hardly matters. The experience is the same. A child refusing to fully live just to prove their loyalty to the pain of the one who came before. And that is what slowly kills you. You dim your light so hers won't feel dimmer. You limit your joy so she won't feel left behind. You sabotage your freedom so she won't seem abandoned. And all the while, you tell yourself you're being loving. But love that demands your suffering is not love. It is bondage. The real betrayal is not in leaving her story behind. The real betrayal is in refusing to live your own. To honor her is not to shrink. It is to expand, to evolve, to transform the pain she could not overcome into wisdom, into freedom, into a life that belongs to you. So if you truly love her, then listen closely. The only way to honor the mother is to outgrow her, not in anger, not in rebellion, but in evolution. She gave you life. Now it is your turn to multiply it, not diminish it. That secret vow, the one you never chose, the one that says, "I won't be freer than you," must be broken. And it must be broken not with hatred, but with love. A silent whisper if she is gone, or a quiet prayer if she is near. Thank you for what you gave, but now I walk a different path. That path is not against her. It is for you. Breaking the vow doesn't mean cutting ties. It doesn't mean erasing her from your life or demonizing her memory. It means something far more subtle and far more powerful. It means redefining the relationship within yourself. Because whether your mother was tender or cold, absent or overprotective, saintly or deeply flawed, the truth is this: who she was in reality is less important than the role she continues to play in your psyche. If that role remains distorted, an altar on which you worship her, or a prison in which you resent her, you will never see her clearly, nor yourself. Think of the myths humanity has spun around mothers. The martyr mother, who sacrifices everything until nothing remains. The perfect mother, unreachable and idealized. The selfless mother, praised for giving but never for being. These are fantasies, projections, myths, and when you cling to them, idolizing or vilifying, you are not relating to her as a human being. You are relating to an image. To heal, the image must be dismantled. You must see her not as goddess or monster, but as a human being, wounded, imperfect, carrying her own invisible wars. A woman shaped by her era, her circumstances, her own unmet needs. When you see her humanity, something inside you begins to soften, not as forced forgiveness, but as liberation, because idealization and resentment are two sides of the same chain. They both keep you bound. This shift is not about excusing her failings. It's about reclaiming your power from the myth. She may have been loving or absent, warm or distant, nurturing or critical. None of that changes the fact that you are now the one holding the legacy. And what you do with it, that is the difference between repeating the pattern or breaking it. In this sense, your task is not to break with her. Your task is to break with the archetype you carry inside, to silence the distorted voice that judges you whenever you shine, to challenge the guilt that rises whenever you choose yourself, to dismantle the fantasy that keeps you waiting for a version of her that never existed, because the past cannot be changed. But the way the past lives inside you, that can, that must. And when you begin this work, something unexpected happens. You no longer need to keep fighting her, nor do you need to keep worshiping her. You begin to stand on your own ground, not as her child, not as her shadow, but as yourself. This is what true liberation looks like. Not rebellion, not denial, but evolution. You take what was given, life itself, and you multiply it, turning inherited pain into awareness, unconscious patterns into choice, old wounds into wisdom, and in doing so, you redefine what it means to honor her. You honor her not by repeating her fate, but by transcending it, not by remaining bound to her suffering, but by creating something new. So let me ask you, are you ready to stop worshiping the myth? Are you ready to stop resenting the shadow? Are you ready to see her clearly, and in doing so, finally see yourself? Because only then does the cycle truly end. Here comes the cruelest revelation. Even if your mother is gone, even if she no longer plays an active role in your life, the cycle continues, not because of her, but because of you. Because somewhere along the way, you learn to abandon yourself in the same way you were once abandoned. Think back to childhood. When love wasn't freely given, you adapted. You stayed quiet. You repressed your feelings. You convinced yourself your needs didn't matter. These survival strategies worked when you were small, but now they have hardened into your way of life. What once protected you now suffocates you. And here is the twisted irony. You have become your own authoritarian figure, the one who silences your tears, the one who demands perfection, the one who pushes you to perform for love and approval, but never lets you rest. That voice inside, the one that tells you you're not enough, that you should be stronger, faster, better, that isn't really you. It is the echo of the negative inner mother, the distorted archetype still alive within your psyche. You think you are your own worst enemy, but you're not. You're just repeating the treatment you once received, carrying out the abandonment on yourself. Every time you deny your exhaustion and push harder, you repeat it. Every time you minimize your pain and call it weakness, you repeat it. Every time you accept what is unacceptable, just to avoid losing love, you repeat it. And the deepest part of you, the inner child who once cried out, remains unheard. Sometimes that child whispers in sadness. Other times it screams in rage, sabotaging relationships and dreams. But always it is begging for one thing, to finally be seen. This is why affirmations alone don't work, why positive thinking feels hollow. Because you cannot plaster light over a wound that was born in darkness. What the child inside you needs is not denial, but attention, not suppression, but presence. Ask yourself, if a child came to you broken, exhausted, crying, would you scold them? Would you demand more from them? Or would you hold them gently, asking for nothing in return? That child is still inside you. And until you learn to treat yourself with that same compassion, the cycle of abandonment will go on. Healing, then, means reparenting yourself, becoming the mother you always needed, speaking to yourself with kindness when you fall, allowing rest when you are tired, sitting beside your own grief without judgment. This is not weakness. It is medicine, the medicine you've been deprived of, but which you can now give to yourself. Yes, it feels strange at first, unnatural, because for so long you've only known the whip, the criticism, the cold silence. But none of that was ever truly yours. It was borrowed, inherited software running inside you. And now it's time to uninstall it. This is the revolution. To treat yourself differently than you were treated. To refuse to keep repeating what once broke you. To say no, not only to others, but to the old voice inside that demands you abandon yourself again. And here is the paradox. The moment you stop abandoning yourself, the desperate hunger for someone else to save you begins to dissolve. Because you realize the Savior you've been waiting for has always been you. Healing is not the absence of wounds. It is not becoming flawless, untouchable, or immune to pain. Healing is learning to live consciously with what once ruled you in silence. It is the moment when the shadows of the past no longer dictate your choices, because you finally see them for what they are, echoes, not destiny. Jung's words echo here with sharp clarity. What you do not make conscious appears in your life as fate. And for years that fate has been repeating. The same arguments, the same disappointments, the same silent hunger gnawing at the edges of your life. But the instant you bring it into awareness, the spell begins to break. This is the threshold few ever cross. To stop being the symbolic child of your past, and to become the symbolic parent of your present. To stop waiting for love to arrive from outside, and to start giving it to yourself, piece by conscious piece. To stop running from the pain, and finally walk through it, holding the hand of the child within you. And when you do this, something shifts. The loyalty that once bound you becomes love that liberates you. The myth that once controlled you becomes a story you can learn from, then set aside. The voice that once judged you becomes quieter, softer, until eventually it dissolves into silence. Not an empty silence, but a clean one, a silence in which your own voice finally emerges. This is not glamorous work. It will not earn applause. No one may notice when you say no for the first time, when you rest without guilt, when you speak to yourself with kindness instead of contempt. But these small acts are revolutionary. Each one declares to the old inheritance, the cycle ends here. And that is how you honor her, not by repeating her fate, not by carrying her wounds, but by transforming them. By taking what was broken and turning it into wisdom. By ensuring that if you have children, or if you ever guide another soul, they will not inherit the same silence, the same hunger, the same prison. This is the quiet revolution. It doesn't begin with the world outside. It begins with you. In every moment you choose not to abandon yourself. In every act of compassion you give to the child within. In every decision where you choose awareness over repetition. So I leave you with a question, not to burden you, but to awaken you. How much longer will you live as the echo of your past? And when will you begin to live as the author of your present? Because at the end of the day, the most important mother in your life is not the one who raised you. It is the one you choose to become for yourself. And she, the inner mother you are building with each conscious act, she has not been born yet. But the moment you decide to stop waiting, to stop repeating, to stop abandoning yourself, she begins to take shape. And when she does, everything changes. Not overnight, not perfectly, but irrevocably, because you will no longer be the silent child waiting for rescue. You will be the adult who finally learned how to save yourself. That is the threshold. That is the inheritance worth passing on. That is the quiet revolution.